Hey guys, welcome back to NASCAR Talk. Today I'll be talking about the Indianapolis road course race that took place this last Sunday. Hope you enjoy. The first thing that happened was William Byron and Chase Briscoe battling hard for the lead. And I was kind of impressed with Chase Briscoe's run early on, even though he made a lot of mistakes during the race. But William Byron had a good run as well. Eventually they lost the lead when pit strategy took over. But about halfway through the stage, Austin Cindric spun out, just missed the first corner. I was kind of disappointed in Austin Cindric's run. I feel like he did okay, but judging off of his other road course races, he's had a lot of success. He's done a good job in the 33 car, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the 2 car next year. At the end of the stage, Byron and Briscoe pit right before the stage ended, and Tyler Reddick assumed the lead. Now, only 10 cars stayed out. 30 cars pit and hope to regain their track position later on, once the stage had ended. Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon stayed out. Why is this important? Because they're on the playoff battle, the bubble. So Tyler Reddick is 16th, which is the final playoff spot, and his teammate, Austin Dillon, is 17th. And it's pretty much going to be between those guys. Kevin Harvick is pretty high above the cut line. In fact, he might even be locked in, but I'm not sure. So it's really between those two RCR cars, unless someone wins at Michigan or Daytona that's outside the playoffs. So I think that Tyler Reddick is probably going to get in. He's done a better job this year, in my opinion. He's done a great job, especially for RCR equipment. He's been battling with a lot of drivers inside the top 10. I'm overall impressed. I think he should have a better race car than RCR equipment. RCR is pretty good equipment, but it's not one of the big 4 teams, Penske, Hendrick, SHR, and Joe Gibbs. I think he probably deserves an SHR spot. But he ended up winning the stage, beating his teammate in the points. But overall, that's really what happened in Stage 1. Not much. Once Stage 2 began, Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin were pretty much inseparable. They were battling each other all the way around the racetrack. It wasn't clear which one was faster until Ross Chastain cleared Denny Hamlin. And you might think that, okay, it's over. Ross Chastain has been trying to get by Denny for a couple laps now. It's over. Denny Hamlin's just going to settle into his position now. That's not the case. Going into turn 1, Ross Chastain completely spun right in front of Denny Hamlin, and Denny checked up and barely avoided it. It was really impressive how he saved the race car there. So Denny Hamlin would really appreciate what he did there, because later on he almost won until Chase Briscoe dumped him. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And then after that, Brad Keselowski, before the stage, well, at the end of Stage 1, he stayed out. He stayed out between both pit stops. 2 groups pit right before the stage end and under caution when the stage ended. He did neither. He stayed out, which was an interesting decision. Now, it was pretty hard to get past him for the leaders. He stayed out front for a little while, and then he eventually started slipping back. And then he spun out off the final corner and wrecked his race car, which is pretty disappointing for Brad, considering he thought he was going to do some pretty cool things with that pit strategy there. And I thought it was pretty interesting and fun to watch him try to keep his track position. But those were the 2 major incidents in Stage 2. Other than that, there was a small spin from Joey Logano, which lost him the top 5 position. But other than that, there wasn't any spins. Tyler Reddick ended up winning Stage 2. He swept the stages, which is pretty funny, considering he did eventually wreck out of the race. But when you think road courses and who could sweep the stages, you might think Martin Truex Jr., Chase Elliott, maybe even Kyle Larson. But Tyler Reddick did a good job. He got the stage points he needed, considering he would get wrecked later on. And he did a good job. Eventually, there was a large piece of metal shoved up under the curbing in, I believe, turn 5 or 6. And this would be the beginning of a large problem that would eventually cause 2 red flags. So what the track officials did is they threw the caution, because if you think about it, there's this curbing and the drivers often hop it. Now, what had happened is their splitter had caught, and they kept going, but I do believe they spun. But what had happened is the whole bottom area of their race car had been ripped out and shoved right underneath it, So at first it looked like a tiny piece of metal sticking out, and then they pulled and pulled, and eventually it was probably about a third of the size of a race car, lengthwise. So I thought that that was pretty weird. But that would not be the first time they had a problem with the curbing. So the NASCAR officials worked on the curbing, and they got it back green. Kurt Busch eventually spun Austin Cindric. That would be the second time that Austin Cindric would go around. And then the curbing issue began. I believe it was Kyle Busch or Martin Truex Jr. that hit the curbing, and metal flew everywhere, and it wrecked most of the field. William Byron, Joey Logano, I believe Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, both of them were involved. Like I said, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., so many good competitive cars were eliminated because of that. So after that wreck, they eventually took the curb out. Now the problem with removing that curb is that there was a line. It was a big turtle, and it acted as a ramp. Now in the Xfinity race prior, I believe it was Chris Wright got a ton of airtime by hitting it. And when I say a ton, he got a couple feet off the air. At least the front of his car did. And that was pretty scary. And eventually Michael McDowell hit it, and he got in the air. Corey LaJoie hit it, he got in the air. So that was the main problem with getting rid of it. Now, the first wreck that happened was that resulted in a red flag. Still had the curbing there, and that was when Corey LaJoie hit it. So that turtle was a big issue, but they never did remove that, which is an interesting choice. But I guess they do have to have it there to stop drivers from going too far into the corner and cutting the course. Speaking of cutting the course, we're going to talk about the eventually the finish that took place. It was a multiple overtime finish, and Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe had a lot of controversy. So what had happened is Denny Hamlin was running about 6th place, and eventually he decided to stay out when everybody else pit, and this was kind of weird. They thought that he might just be trying to stay out for 10 more laps so that when he pit he would have fresh tires, and just try to get a couple more positions. Now, this strategy would work, but he would need to lay down some pretty fast lap times. And he was doing just that until he overshot the corner and got into the grass a little bit, and that really killed it. So it looked like Denny Hamlin's day was going to be over at that point. Just get a top 10 and leave. But what he did not expect to happen was that whole curbing incident. And because of that, he was able to pit. And because there were so many red flags and cautions, the other drivers decided to pit too. Now he pit first. He pit under green. And then Kyle Larson and the other leaders pit when those cautions came out. So Denny Hamlin decided to stay out. And where does that put him? That puts him on older tires, 12-lap older tires, and the field behind him. Now, it was 4 to go, or 6 to go, when all this had taken place, but the second red flag and more caution time had brought it to an overtime. And I'm sure he was pretty pleased with that. That would be 4 less laps that he would have to defend against Kyle Larson, Chase Briscoe, and Chase Elliott. So eventually, they got green after Kyle Larson had been shuffled back on a previous restart. They started green, Chase Briscoe right next to Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin got a great launch, and then eventually going into the corner, like all other restarts, he slowed down on entry a little too much. Chase Briscoe flew in on the outside, tried to take the position away, and then A.J. Allmendinger bumped Denny pretty hard through the corner, forcing Chase Briscoe off the racetrack, and he cut the course pretty bad. So what had happened is eventually they went 3 wide. A.J. Allmendinger hit Denny Hamlin and then went 3 wide with Chase Briscoe, so Denny had no choice but to shove Chase Briscoe off the racetrack. Now Chase, he didn't just go through the grass a little bit. He completely cut the corner, and even so much so that he took the lead. And it's debatable whether or not he meant to or not, but Denny Hamlin got the lead back in the next corner. Now, Denny Hamlin's crew had been informed that Chase Briscoe had a penalty. Denny knew he had a penalty as soon as he went through the grass. Denny Hamlin resumed the lead with 2 to go and kept going. And it was a couple corners to go when Chase Briscoe still had not served his penalty, bumped and wrecked Denny. He completely spun him. And me being a Denny fan, I was pretty upset at this. A guy with a penalty just wrecked Denny Hamlin. Now, Chase Briscoe claimed that he did not know that he had a penalty, but it's pretty obvious that he did. Almost everybody knew that he had a penalty. Denny Hamlin knew that he had a penalty. And his crew chief and spotter informed him, Chase Briscoe, on the radio. It's debatable whether or not he said it, but he said, okay, where's turn 10? He said that he was wondering where turn 10 was in his post-race interview. Now, later, eventually, Fox's YouTube channel said or launched a video called Radioactive, where basically they take the best clips from radio communications. Chase Briscoe's was one of them, and it says Chase Briscoe. He said, copy, where's turn 10, when his crew chief had told him that he needed to stop and go in turn 10 because he cut the course. Chase Briscoe later said that he, on Twitter, I believe it was yesterday or today, he said that he did not say that, and that was his crew chief, even though in the interview he said that he was asking where turn 10 was. Nobody else on the radio was asking where turn 10 was. So overall, it's pretty obvious that Chase Briscoe knew that he had a penalty, and it's debatable whether or not he intentionally wrecked Denny Hamlin. In my opinion, he did. It's pretty hard to just completely dump someone on accident, going out of the corner, especially going out of the corner. Maybe it's easy to accidentally do it in the corner, going into it, but going out of the corner, that's pretty tough. Chase Briscoe definitely attempted to wreck Denny Hamlin, and he succeeded. Now, Chase Briscoe eventually had to stop and go, so he stopped, and A.J. Allmendinger had the lead. A.J. Allmendinger, he hadn't done really well all day, and he was just given the lead just because of the pit strategy, and I know I was pretty upset that Denny Hamlin had lost the lead, but I was pretty happy to see A.J. Allmendinger grab it. Eventually, A.J. Allmendinger just coasted around for one more lap and won the first ever Indianapolis road course race. I thought the racing there was pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot. But what I did not enjoy was that red flag period and just the chaotic stuff at the end. So many great race cars were wrecked, and honestly, I would have rather had all the cars competing. Even though it helped Denny Hamlin's chances, I still would have rather had all those cars competing, and they were all taken out of the race because of a mistake by the people at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe by clicking the button down below. Hope you enjoyed this race recap, and I will be making another video on the Michigan race next Sunday. And I thought I'd update you guys on the stop motion video. It's coming along pretty well. I believe I'm much over halfway done. I have 2 laps left to do, and then I'll edit it, and it'll be done. As always, this is Cole Jones, signing off for now. Thanks for watching.